Yeah, and that's a big thing for me is community.
Mhm.
As a senior cannabis advocate, um, seniors need to be brought to the forefront. They need to be educated. They the industry needs to be educated about seniors as
Mhm.
well. Like, we're a different breed. We really
Yeah.
are.
There's a
Um,
disconnect for sure.
and so it's a whole different universe for seniors, and coming in and finding things that are different. The only edibles we had were brownies.
Yeah.
But and we could make a smokable device out of anything. But it is so important because the seniors are the biggest and fastest growing demographic in the industry. And within the next 2 years, the 65 plus community is going to explode,
Mhm.
and they are using cannabis. Marketing isn't targeted towards them, education isn't targeted towards them. And the dispensaries, if they build their community and if they do it the right way, if they're in it for the right reasons, they will not only scale, but they will advance, because it's about people.
Yeah. And I
It's
had
not
this
about a
conversation.
dollar.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I had this conversation on LinkedIn last week about the private consultation, versus,
Yes.
somebody putting their service animal right on the counter. And I lost my shit, because you don't put a dog on the counter. Right, Holly, right. But ideally, I mean, if you've got, that space and you have the liberty to it, carve out nooks along the sides of the showroom floor. And that way, if you do need, more than a minute, you're not removing yourself from the experience, but you do have some privacy and you can
Hmm.
go one-to-one with the bud tender, and the bud tender has access to what they're talking about, which is right there. And you're not disturbing, the flow of things. But,
Yep.
there's 1,000 different ways. we
I
could
am
Yeah,
going to,
exactly.
I am going to take us back to the topic of leadership. But before I do that, I also want to mention that, over the last several months, there are certain things that come up in all conversations. And consequently, and in talking with Angie, we are going to launch a bud tender think tank, which I think ought to be very interesting. So also, if you know any bud tenders, tell them to pay attention, because we are going to launch that. Because it always comes back, no matter who the participants are and what areas they are in. Because even those like Suzanne and Judith and Angela, who are in accounting type of businesses, that in itself has a lot to do with the dispensaries. Because Judith can tell you, you need to be, cannabis accounting is much different than regular accounting. So everything comes back to, and we exist as businesses because of that plant and because the plant touching businesses. And I have said this on other think tanks. The studies show that each plant touching business uses between like 9 and 12 ancillary businesses. So the ancillary businesses are the foundation for all of those. But what really moves our industry ahead and keeps and gives it its prosperity and its own economy are the plant touching businesses. It's the plant. So my leadership, like I said, we are going to launch the Bud Tender Think Tank, which I think ought to be very, very interesting. But in regards, moving us back to leadership, so one of the other things that I noticed in the conversations, especially those about how to deal with people with your staff or team undermining your leadership, is that everybody's suggestions, without saying it, the underlying thing was to approach it with grace and kindness. And I just think that's just so beautiful. But my leadership question is, because we all know those bad leaders, and we don't refer to them as bad leaders, we use more negative terms than that. They are still around. Why are there still bad leaders? I mean, just not in cannabis, just in general. And Suzanne, you haven't said anything for a little while here, so girl, you're my target on this. Why do
Okay.
bad leaders stay in leadership positions?
So first off, my experience has been in like government. I find that the leaders there, I don't know how they get away with it. They hide. Again, they will take the your work presented as theirs, and nobody ever realizes that they don't understand what they're doing. And you would think if they're presenting something that's not theirs, they wouldn't be able to present it properly. They don't understand the nuances of, say, an Excel spreadsheet. Where do the numbers tie together? How do they come together? Where did you get that number? So I think that's one thing. I think another thing that I've run across is nepotism is big.
Oh,
A
yes.
lot of companies where maybe it was somebody you went to college with, or I do see a lot of family members that are hired in on different companies where no, they're not going to get fired. They're going to be put over here in sometimes really high leadership positions and make a mess of things
Oh
where
my God,
somebody else
yeah.
has to come in and clean up for them. So yeah, that's two things. Either they hide or there's nepotism.
Um, so Holly, you look like you've got something to say. Why do bad leaders, why don't we get rid of bad leaders?
I was agreeing with Suzanne. It's not what you know; it's who you know.
Mhm.
With
That's
these bad
exactly
leaders
it.
that just keep, you screw up, you move up,
Hmm.
type of thing.
Yeah, I see it in business all the time. And the business I'm in, they rehired somebody who stole from them. Like, that's insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But it was all about who they were,
Mhm.
had nothing to do with anybody else. And they came in, they became a leader, they became a manager. But meanwhile, they had been robbing them blind. Again, you do you, boo boos.
Yeah, that just reminds me of fake it till you make it.
Yeah,
Judith, I loved your expression during the beginning of this conversation.
yeah, me too.
So Maria, do you think that since you've done both corporate and cannabis, do you think that this is just an issue within the cannabis industry? Do you think this is an issue across all industries?
I think it's across all industries. I think the cannabis industry, depending on the state and where you're in, is small compared to bigger companies and bigger corporate companies. And I have seen bad leaders just kind of, the word gets out there. Like, the cannabis industry is still quite small, at least in Florida, and eventually, those leaders will be known for their work, and
Lack
people are on
thereof.
Reddit, for example, or events, and so um, I always try to not resent them because it's only going to eat me up, but rather they won't last long in their role, right, in their career. And I'm starting to see that, which is interesting. But yeah, I think it's across all industries for sure. And nepotism is huge. It's definitely, it's all who you know, right? I mean, we probably even we know someone who got a job because they know someone important, or even for ourselves in our career, we've gotten a job or gotten, an interview because we knew someone there. So yeah, it's definitely a real thing.
I think bad leaders stay in place a lot of the times because one, people are afraid to speak up when there's bad leaders. Just so you know, I think it's across all industries. I've worked across across the corporate spectrum, and there's bad leaders all around. I think that bad leaders get carried by good teams as well. So you can be a bad leader. That's why a lot of what you guys are saying is like, I try to be nice and I try to figure it out. I don't. Um, I don't think it's for me to take on your job and then keep you getting paid on my back, right? So I'm gonna do my role to the best of my abilities. You know, sometimes, like a lot of times in corporate, someone leaves and they dump the workload on you, right? Like it's like, oh, well, in the meantime, they don't want to give you the leadership title. But when you step outside of the title and look at your role and responsibilities, you're a leader too, right? You're doing your job, your boss's job, and their boss's job. And I'm just speaking from experience. So I think it's about one. There's like if you don't have access to the ears at the top, it's kind of hard for you to expose, right? Like, because what you said, like there a lot of times about being a good leader. I mean, as a controller, I have a team underneath me, right? I had a team. So I didn't do the day-to-day granular things, but as a team, they pulled it together and I tell the story, right? So is it that they're doing my job? No, like everyone kind of has a role that plays into the final product,
A
right? So
piece of the puzzle.
there's everyone, yeah. But if I'm expecting them to put together my presentations, if I'm not like, if the only time I'm meeting with them is to pull together what they're, I'm not developing them as a leader. I'm not working on the process improvements. I'm not, like taking things to the next level. And
Right.
also, I think I was always trained that your job is to make your boss's job easier, right? Like that's kind of, but I think that's
That's
bullshit,
old
right?
school.
Yeah, my job is to do my job, and I think
Yes.
that one of the things that kind of got lost in translation is this. It's like a hazing, especially like in corporate America, where like the lower level takes on the brunt of the work, and then as you go up the ladder your responsibilities get pushed down, and then you get more money, life gets a little easier, like you work your way up, so you work hard in the beginning. And I think that coming into the cannabis space where it's like a lot smaller, right? Like it's not so many levels. So everyone's kind of having to chip in and get the job done. I feel like in that aspect, the bad leaders are sticking around because they're the ones who got the license. And so automatically they think that because they know cannabis, or they knew legacy cannabis, they knew how to sell cannabis, that they know how to run a business. And the two doesn't go hand in hand all the time, right? Like not everyone is meant to be a leader. There are,
Absolutely.
you could have some leadership qualities, but are you really built to develop a team and lead a team? And also, as a leader, you're supposed to worry about their development, right? Like you can't just bring a bud tender in and expect them to be a bud tender all their lives, right? Like it should be a turnover. Like you like, okay, I'm developing you. Maybe okay, you go from bud tender to senior bud tender, right? And you give them some sort of development responsibilities for them to develop the newer bud tenders, or you
And
come in as
educate
a
them.
exactly. And I think that's I think that a lot of the businesses are set up just to sell, and they don't think yet about, because they have never experienced that, right? That's a HR thing, right? Like developing staff and making sure that they're getting reviewed and trained, and then you're giving them feedback or where they're going wrong. That's a
Yes.
continuous thing, right? It shouldn't just
Oh,
happen once a
absolutely.
year. And I think that es- especially when you're spent so much time just trying to get money to start up, or just trying, like all of those things get lost. And so it just becomes focused on keeping the doors open, and no respect for the workers sometimes, right? Because they're not taught. Coming from legacy, street, you handle someone, you deal with things a different way. The cannabis industry, legal cannabis, is no longer just like, it's a lot of times multi-million-dollar businesses that you're starting to run. So you have to think of it like, okay, well, maybe I don't know how to do this job. Okay, that's where you take a full kind of inventory of what your skill set is, and then you have to kind of go outside of what, like eventually you have to start creating a budget for it. And I think a lot of it is leaders not wanting to, or not wanting to accept the reality that you just can't, you're just not a good leader.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's the best way
Yes.
of seeing
Not
it,
everybody is made to do everything.
Yeah.
And there's bad in every industry. And if you think about it, it's the bottom people, the ones that work hard, that don't make the money. For example, nurses, they bust their asses. Who's making the money? The hospitals, the doctors.
Yes.
In education, you have all the teachers. Who's making the big bucks? The principal, Board of Education members. And these are leaders that oftentimes get to where they are because of the nepotism. So it isn't just the cannabis industry; it's all over the world. It's business, whether it's cannabis or whether it's something else. But the problem with the cannabis industry is they're panicking. Like Judith said, they're trying to keep the lights on, and so they do all these convoluted sales, which is the wrong way to go. The way to go is slow, intentional connections and building your tribe. And that's where you're going to get your return customers, your bigger orders. I went into a dispensary the other day. I spent like $100. And the girl said to me, "Wow, I've never seen a receipt this long." Like, seriously? It just blows me away. So I know what's going on. These are all, people that get people to come in, get a pre-roll on sale, or, something like that, instead of building the tribe and connecting with your community. I think that would be so much more effective.
So, Holly, I can tell you have a lot to say. No, you don't.
Not really. I'm enjoying the conversation and the discussion. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, no, I don't have too much to say on this.
Well, doggone.
I have a question for the group. Something that I've run across in my career over many years. How many people have applied for a position above theirs only to have the company hire someone above you as your manager and then ask you to train them?
That's pretty common, and it's worse if you're coming from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
If they hire from the outside, it's worse. But if they promote from within, then you have a different set of problems because you have team members that think they should have gotten. So you got two spectrums there, and honestly, you just have to be fair and you have to be consistent. You have to be structured. You have to make clear expectations, and that's all there is to it. Fair is fair.
Or when they start interviewing without telling you.
Or hire
Oh my
someone
God,
and
yeah.
have them come into work and then tell you, oh, by the way, this person's above you. They're going to be your boss from now, huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of weird stuff.
Well, as difficult as it is, I think the solution is entrepreneurship. Is owning your own business so you really have control of what's going on. Now, the downside of it, entrepreneurship is extremely high risk, very stressful, and you're likely to lose both your ass and your assets. And you have to be willing to take that risk over and over until it clicks. And I think an important part of being an entrepreneur or being in any type of career is knowing when to use your leadership skills. Because I do believe as women, we all have them. Just like I believe as women, we all have good negotiating skills. And I'm basing that on having to negotiate with a 3-year-old about bedtime.
Oh my God, yes. 100%.
You know, so we come that is more difficult than walking into a room filled with men who are going to make a decision about your career or your business. You know, so my approach is always and that's what I put in the back of my mind. I'm not dealing with a 3-year-old that needs to go to bed and shut up. You know, in theory, I should be dealing with other adults. And I think in regards to negotiation, that's when you walk into the room with your leadership skills on display. So does anyone have a takeaway from this as we wind down here? Is there any last note, advice, or insight you would like to leave with the people who are viewing this?
Just know your people.
That's a good one.
Just know your people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's half the battle. It really is.
Yeah, my encouragement would be to anybody in leadership or those wanting to get into leadership to really understand what that means. It's not just an extra dollar or, you know, more opportunities or working closer with, you know, higher up, but it's a big responsibility from the hiring portion to, you know, understanding what motivates your team, to the operational side of things and sales. And so I think, you know, make sure you know what you're signing up. And then for those in leadership already, I encourage them to continue to learn about leadership. Like, don't stop learning. I don't ever feel like, oh, I'm the best leader. You can always learn something from someone at the bottom or at the top. That's something that helped me in my career. Someone so young in leadership is just reading Harvard Business Review is great. There's a lot of research that you can utilize in the cannabis industry, and just knowing how to treat people. That's all going to help the bottom line with retention, sales, if you've got your people that are happy, if your patients are coming back. So just always learn, just try to help your team. And then if you're that leader that likes to teach people, they're going to absolutely love you, and they're going to really remember you for the rest of their career.
Yes, I agree with everybody else's thoughts here. Be fair, treat others the way you want to be treated. You know, you'd scream at somebody in public because you wouldn't want to be screamed at in public.
Now, I believe that every day you treat people the way you want to be treated, no matter how bad they treat you. Because at the end of the day, I'm the one that has to put my head on the pillow and know I did the right thing in the end.
Yeah.
So I think the other takeaway from this that came up in the conversation about leadership was integrity and character. That a leader has integrity and character, and you would think that that would get us further than being the niece of the owner.
No.
But it doesn't always work that way. So now I want to remind everyone that not only can you view this on LinkedIn, but it's also available on YouTube and on the Women's Cannabis Chamber of Commerce website. So all the participants' information and links are all on the post, also on the YouTube and LinkedIn and website, so that you can contact the ladies that have been on this. And I want to thank you all for participating in this. You are truly kick-ass leaders. And I hope that you will join